So we're going to go through an initial evaluation demonstration with this video and quickly hit on the 5 key points that we're going to take a look at from a mechanical standpoint in that $49 initial evaluation. So we'll start off here with the front view video. Again, we're going to capture 2 pitches from the front, 2 pitches from the side. Start off with the front video here on our student. We're basically going to take this right to the point where the student's at the top of the leg lift. We're not that worried about anything going on setup-wise unless there's a dramatic issue. But in terms of the 5 concepts that we're going to teach, we're going to start off with stride direction. We're going to get to the top of the leg lift here. We're going to draw a vertical line that starts somewhere between, somewhere in the middle of the student's head, between the ear and their eye. Take that line directly down to the base of their foot and at a 90-degree angle. Then we can grab another color. A lot of times I like to go with a red off of blue. And we're going to extend that line pretty much straight out toward the camera, and that's going to indicate where their stride should go. Now if they're in the middle of the rubber, that line's going to be pretty close to straight. If they're off to one side of the rubber, you may have to angle the line just a touch to be parallel. This is a 2-dimensional perspective here. So generally take it about straight out here. And that red line's indicating where their stride foot's going to go. Okay. Generally, when we're going to take a look at stride direction, I like to create a lane that goes from the toe of the foot to the heel. So we'll use one more color here. Start off at the toe. You can see that's closer to the third base side of the line, so we're going to angle it out just slightly. And also go from the heel. We're going to angle that one out just slightly as well, so they're more parallel with the edges of the mat. As you can see, the edges of the base of the mat here are wider than the top, again because of the 2-dimensional perspective. So that lane will actually get what appears to be a little bit wider down here at the bottom than it is at the very top. Okay. When we look at where you're at the top of the leg lift, what we're going to want to follow is the direction that you're carrying your body and where you're striding. So we're going to take from the top of the leg lift, we're going to go into front foot landing. And this is something that we'll commonly see, a drift that's taking that stride foot offline over here toward the third base side. And we can see that that lead foot for this particular student is landing outside, on the outside edge or third base edge of that stride line right there. With that stride being outside that lane, we're going to give this a below average score because they're misdirected in that stride, which would be a 2. If we find that stride to be in the lane somewhere between the 2 outside lines, either over here or possibly over here, that would be a score of 3. And of course, if we're directly on that line, we would have a score of a 4. So we got the stride direction at this point indicating that drift. Okay, so that would be the first score from the front view that we're going to take a look at. The next thing that we're going to take a look at from this front view is going to be the head displacement. Now we can see that his body, of course, has gone to the third base side because of that drift. For head displacement, that's really has more to do with how much movement happens from where his head is at foot plant to where it's going to be at release. So we're going to draw another vertical line now, starting with the center of their head. Again, it'll be kind of between ear and eye, and that line's going to come vertically down. And that indicates a direct path that we'd like to see the head follow from that point. And then we're going to create our optimal angle or inside optimal angle line that we want to use to measure how much head displacement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a different color line right at waist level, and I'm going to take that line up at a 15-degree tilt. Now that 15-degree mark is our average break point. So somebody that ends up with their head right at or very close to this 15-degree line, on that back, get that line back on there again, see if I can put that back up there, so now it went off on me. Let me get that back up to that 15-degree angle there. If they're on that 15-degree mark, that's going to be a score of, or just inside it, that's going to be a score of 3. If they're outside that line, ending up somewhere over in this this region, that's going to be a score of 2. And if they're inside, if they're more than halfway and on, somewhere between 10 and 5 degrees of displacement, they're going to be a 4. So let's take a look with this student to see how much displacement he's going to get into when he releases the ball. We can see, we'll draw another line that indicates his individual displacement. Generally at this point, the nose is about the best place to measure from. And we're going to see that he's right at 74 degrees, so just outside. Now, that would be what constitutes about a 3. So again, somewhere very, very close to that 15 degree displacement. Now, any more than that, we start to getting down around the 70 mark or more, and that's going to drop us into that 2 range. So we can see that his head displaces about 16 degrees, which is not really bad, but definitely more than we would like, and we certainly would like to get that up closer to that 4 range. Okay, so we've got a slight stride direction drift, dropping him into the 2 on his stride direction, and about a 3 on his head positioning. Now, we can take a quick preliminary look at arm action from the front view as well, and one of the big things that we're going to want to take a look at from an arm action standpoint for scoring purposes is the position of and angle of the hand and forearm relative to the upper arm when he's turning the corner and fully externally rotating. Right at about this point, we want to see that the hand and forearm create a nice acute angle. So we get into that power V position. So that angle is nice and tight. We want that showing up to be a really close angle. Somewhere here in the teens to 20s is going to be a good arm action preliminary score. So we're not going to score it just yet, as we'll look a little further from the side view. But this is definitely something that we want to point out. Now if we start to see an angle that is wider, more out here, okay, we're down into the 15 or 75 degree kind of range there, that's not going to be too good. All right, that's indicating that we have a problematic arm action position right there that we're going to want to include in our thought process when we go to score that arm action score. Now, real quick, I'm going to bring up a model from the front view. Let me get over to our front view. We're going to go a little ways here. Go over to number 190. We're going to take, let me back here, and take a quick look at Mr. LaMarche. We're going to put him side by side. This is a young Will LaMarche. We're going to put him side by side with our current student, who is at this one right here. And we're going to get a quick look and demonstration here. We can take a look at where that stride direction is. And right off the bat, you can see that stride direction is significantly better. We don't need the angle. We're going to go ahead and use our lines. So good to be able to use a demonstration video if you have one that you like in particular that demonstrates high scores with some of those things that we're taking a look at. You can obviously see stride direction there as well inside that lane that we create. All right. We're also going to take a quick look at displacement angle. So let's go ahead and start Will off right here with that vertical line. You can also see it's nice to see that line comes down from his head and works right through his knee. And then we're going to create our displacement angle from his waist for optimal window that we're looking for no more than about that 15 degree displacement. Okay, and let's see how much displacement he's got. You can see that as he comes through release, he's inside, coming to a release point right there. The ball's about to come out. We'll get a blue line, and we can see that he's well inside that mark, all the way up to 81. So that, of course, would be a score of 4. That's more of what we're looking for at that point. Now, if we back it up, we can also see that max external rotation right here at this point, and we see a nice, tight arm action right in there in the teens, which is really good. That arm disappears right here. It's fully externally rotated, disappearing. That's good. So again, preliminary arm action score looks good. So again, from our front view, we noticed that stride was outside that lane that we create. In the 2 range, head displacement was at 16 degrees, which would be in the 3 range, but arm action is solid, would be in the 4 range. So we've got a score kind of across the board, 2 stride, 3 head displacement, and 4 with the arm action. So let's go ahead and shift over to the front view, the side view. Take a quick look at the side view here. And we're going to focus on where his body is at once that front foot lands on the ground. You notice as he's striding out, big ball of foot landing. Now the big thing that we're going to take a look at from the front view here, or from the side view, is weight positioning. So a couple of things that we take a look at. You can see that that lead shoulder has already started to clear out, but we know that that lead shoulder is going to create a negative angle to his lead hip. So we know that that lead shoulder is sitting out in front of his lead hip at this point, which is telling us his weight's forward. That's part of the reason that his shoulders are starting to rotate. The other thing is we can see that he's got kind of a forward angled spine angle here. So vertical, if his spine was perfectly vertical right here, that would be about a 3. Because it's slightly tilted forward, that would be a 2. Ideally, what we want to see is, we want to see that if we drew a line from his belly button or his belt buckle up, that line would be tilted back. So basically the middle of his neck, or inside the ear, between the eye and the ear, would be angled back. His head would be farther back, and that would indicate to us that his weight is still back. So if that line is angled backwards, like the blue line that's up there right now, we know that that would be a 4. If, kind of position. If it's vertical, that would be a borderline 3, and if it's forward, that would be a 2. We definitely know at this point that we want the weight to be back at this point. That's what we're shooting for. That's one of the big keys that we want to have happen. So arm action wise, from the side view, to complete our arm action score, definitely like to see that his hand is up above the elbow when his front foot lands on the ground. That's a good arm action indicator. And then we're going to finally measure out and see how much external rotation he gets. Okay, so we get to the point where it's laid back as far as it's going to be laid back, and then measure from that elbow through the wrist, or through that forearm. Make that line parallel with the forearm. We saw that's at 15 degrees right there, and anything that's 15 degrees or lower likely is going to be in that 4 range. Maybe borderline 3 at 15, but 3 to 4. Now if it's less than that, we start getting higher than 4 or than 15 degrees. That's definitely going to drop into the 2 to 3 range from a score standpoint. Okay, so looking at that arm action, we definitely want to take a quick look from the front at the power V, and from the side we want to check both the height of the hand relative to the elbow when the front foot lands and the maximum external rotation. Now the last thing that we take a look at from a fundamental mechanical standpoint is the glove, the position of the glove when the front foot lands on the ground, and then where it ends up. And we may need to go back to the front view to just close out where that glove's at. So what I generally like to do is take a look at where the glove's at this point, circle it up, okay, put the circle around it, and then we're going to see, does that glove move forward, backward, down, or up, or stay the same as he rotates to throw. And we can see as he's coming through to throw, it looks like the glove stays. It doesn't really go forward much, drops a little bit, which is okay. Not really retracting back, started in relatively close to his body, okay? Usually from the side view, we'd like to see the glove a little bit more out in front of his body at this point, but sometimes the camera perspective can skew that a bit. So the fact that that glove is not disappearing and coming backwards is a good indicator that we're probably going to give that glove somewhere between a 3 and a 4, depending on when we go back to the front view and take a look at, is it dropping off to the side or spreading away? Okay, so from the side view, the big factor is weight positioning. Where's that lead shoulder compared to the lead hip? And how about the spine angle? Is it centered 90 degrees? Is it leaned forward, or is it leaned backward? That's going to give you your indicator. Okay. Okay. Now let's quickly go back. Actually, let's pull up a quick comparison side view from our model videos, and we are going to go to number 220. Here. Here's Mr. Justin Verlander, who we like to use as an example from this side view. We take a quick look, we see where he's at when his front foot lands on the ground, and we can see based on his jersey, we go from the middle of the neck, using the line preferably, middle of his neck to his belt buckle, and you can see how that line is tilted backward. You can see how shoulder's still closed, chest is facing us, and that lead shoulder is back behind the lead hip. So both of these lines are tilted backwards. This would be a 4 to 5 on our scale with weight positioning. It's one of the reasons he's able to stay closed, and obviously one of the reasons he's a very effective major league pitcher. Versus comparatively, mid-neck coming down closer to vertical with that spine angle, maybe even tilted slightly forward. And certainly the lead shoulder clearing out, we've got that lead hip. Lead shoulder is well out in front of that lead hip. So that again is indicating that the weight is definitely out in front. All right. So we're looking at the difference between, on the right-hand side, a 4 to a 5 versus a 3 to more likely a 2 here with the student on the left. So with that, we're going to be able to put together a relatively comprehensive score. We'll go back one more time real quick to close it out with our front view. With our student here, we need to go back to number 109, and let's just take a quick look at the glove side. We can see that glove elbow and that glove side wanting to tuck in. Let's circle it up from the front view, see how much movement we have with the glove from here. And you can see that glove is obviously working its way down and away, so even though it doesn't pull back, it is sliding from the center of his body over toward the first base side, creating a big gap between his elbow and his body. Part of the reason that we would drop this glove down more likely to a 3, and that's part of what's allowing his head to displace more than we would like. The more we can keep that glove in a stable position in front of his body, the more it's going to keep his head in a stable position, centered up, closer to the middle, and moving everything in the direction of the target. So again, we've got a stride direction that's going to be in the range of a 2. We've got a head displacement that's going to be in the range of about a 3. We have an arm action that's going to be in the range of a 3 to 4. We have a weight positioning that's going to be a 2 to maybe a 3, but somewhere in that high 2 range, I would say. And then a glove side that's probably going to be around a 3 or so based on what we're looking at here. That'll give you your composite score. You can compile that all up and certainly discuss with your student how the training program, the level 1 classes, and introduction to our fundamental drill sets, concepts, and basic mechanics that we go through will begin to help them to address their specific needs based on their composite and their individual skill scores. We'll come up with a closing video that you can add on at the end that will just be a standard add-on video that talks a little bit about TPC and thanking them for participating. But overall, that's about all you need to cover in that initial pitching $49 evaluation.